Hello, I'm Becky Nielsen. I'm a respiratory therapist along with being the Director of Ancillary Services at Pediatric Home Service. The goal of this video is to offer you some suggestions for supply management so that you can make the most of your time at home with your child, make sure you always have the supply items you need, and so that you can make sure that you're managing your supplies for your growing child while optimizing healthcare dollars. PHS always encourages the parents to be very involved with the supply ordering and management for their child. Again, you're coming from a hospital or a facility where you opened the drawer and you knew where everything was and it was always stocked. And just like the hospital, they have a central supply and then they have the bedside stock. So that's what we're talking to you a bit about today. We find that it's important for you to know about the supplies, not only to make sure that there's not an emergency lack of supplies where you're having to come into PHS to pick up something emergently, but also so that you get a firm grip on the exact supplies that you're using in the home, because they might be different from what your child was using in the hospital, and then you will have a better opportunity to troubleshoot and really know what your child is using, so that if you're being asked about the blue piece connected to the red piece, that you'll know exactly what those parts and pieces are by making yourself most familiar with the supply items. The way I have this organized is based as a central supply. So this is where all of the supply items are organized and then they're put out to where you use them every day. But this is the sort of the one source of truth as far as how much supplies you have in the home and where you look for reordering. You could think about what you have in the emergency bag or at the bedside as sort of already used, and this is what you're basing your order off of. Depending upon your child's need, you may get a supply sheet as soon as they're discharged from the hospital, or if they have a lower amount of needs, you may have to request a supply sheet from either their primary clinician or from our customer service department. The supply sheet itemizes each item that your child uses by item type, the item description, the item code, the minimum that we think that you should have on hand at all times for safety, and then some lines for space for reordering. How frequently you choose to order depends upon how much storage space you have. Some families choose to order monthly, whereas other families choose to order on a weekly basis. A key to remember is, as far as insurance payers are concerned, we can't send you over a month's worth of supplies. So if you have enough space, the most you're ever going to be able to order at one time is 1 month, and you can order as frequently as weekly if your space is limited. So I've organized the system today to go through the titles or the categories of the supply sheet so that I'm able to easily go through and find the items that I need, check to make sure I have the minimum on hand, and project how much I'm going to need depending on how frequently I'm ordering. So if I am ordering once a week, I'm going to need less based on the child's usage, versus if I'm ordering once a month, I'm probably going to need to order more to cover the whole month's time span. So the first category on my supply sheet is adapters. So I just need to find where I have my adapters, and I see them clearly labeled here, and then I can just open the drawer and go down the list. So I'm looking for an item code 001822. I'm going to flip through and see that this isn't it, because I've got the name of the product and the reorder number, and that doesn't match, and I know that's not it, and I flip through until I find it. Once I've located the product in the drawer and found that I have either enough or need to reorder the product, I'm able to mark it down on my supply sheet. If I don't need something, I find it handy to just put a slash through it, just so that I know at least the item has been addressed and that I didn't forget about ordering it or miss it looking for it in the drawer system. There are other supplies that don't necessarily fit into bins, but I can at least have the shelf labeled so that it shows what the supply is and where it should be, so that's a good indicator of when you're running low on something and need to reorder. Many of PHS's supply items do have expiration dates, so it's very important to rotate the stock so that you're using the oldest stock first and moving in the newer stock after that. Because oxygen tanks cannot be stored in a closet and they need to be stored actually in a well-ventilated area, you might have your tanks that are in another portion or part of the house. So you need to find your oxygen supply on your supply sheet, come and check how many tanks you have based upon your child's need, make sure that they haven't expired, and that you reorder your oxygen with your supply so that we can route the supply delivery and oxygen delivery at the same time. I also have some open bins that are used for our daily use, but just to give you an example of how you could keep your dirty equipment versus your clean equipment separated. So a lot of our families choose to have bins such as these where they can put dirty respiratory supplies. So if they've given neb treatments and they need to wash and disinfect the neb kits or different adapters, they'll throw them in the dirty respiratory and then they'll clean them, disinfect them, rinse them well, and then put them into a clean to dry. The same thing for the gastrostomy. We never mix our respiratory and gastrostomy supplies, so that's why you're seeing two distinct sets of bins for those cleaning purposes. There may be some supplies that your household uses that aren't necessarily provided by PHS. So those would be things like paper towels for drying your hands after washing, waterless hand sanitizer or Clorox wipes or disinfectant wipes to keep your area surfaces clean. Those items would also be great to be stored along with the supply so you can know what you need to purchase when you're out at the convenience store the next time. Another idea that we suggest to families is to have an emergency backup supply that's not necessarily in a place where the professional caregivers in the house or that can see it or where you automatically go for supplies. This is just so that, again, you have sort of a backup to your backup. So you've got your bedside supplies, you've got your central supply here, and then you've got an emergency set of supplies so that you always have exactly what you need to take the best care of your child. My next idea for you is a shower caddy or a cleaning caddy. And this is just a compartment that has a handle in the middle that's easy for you to bring around your house from the child's bedroom to the living space to the kitchen, backyard, wherever it is that you're going out and about throughout your house. And what I have in here is my emergency tracheostomy supplies, water, different ambu mask. I've got suction supplies, my infusion emergency kit, but anything that I would need in an emergency and I want close at hand. So again, this is just in the cleaning section of a convenience store, but something like this can be really helpful for you to be able to move about your house but have your emergency supplies on hand immediately. And if your child is on a trach or a ventilator, PHS always provides you with an emergency bag to keep all of the emergency supplies you would need to use if you're away from your home and you don't have all of your supplies immediately available to you. Within the bag, we give you a sheet that you can check off and look to make sure that you have ample supply of each item. Again, just look through the bag frequently to make sure that the supplies aren't expiring and that they don't need to be rotated out. If you have professional nurses in your home, they'll be checking the emergency bag and the bedside supplies at the beginning of their shift. But just always be sure that if you're going to leave your house where you have all of your supplies, that you make sure that you have everything that you need in the bag, and then if you use things when you're out, that those supplies are replenished immediately when you come home, just so that if there's ever an emergency where you need to get out of the house immediately, that you have exactly what you need to take care of your child and keep them safe. The setup that I have here today is just an example of what it would be like if you had a ton of supplies from PHS, so your child had a lot of needs where they were receiving a lot of medical equipment, therapies, and supplies. Of course, if you don't get all of these items from PHS because your child doesn't need them, you can adapt the plan and look at how it would work for your child and their specific needs.